Hey everybody, this is Dr. Paulette, and I'm coming to you once again to continue the conversation during Minority Mental Health Month on mental health awareness. In my four-part series of awareness, understanding, planning, and then action. And in this process, it is so important that I talk about forgiveness. A couple days ago, I posted a quote about the importance of forgiving is for you and not for someone else. And a couple people made some responses that one, I'll never forgive that person for what they did to me. Or somebody even made a comment that I'm at peace with what happened, screw that person, blah, blah, blah. And that struck me as kind of funny because if you can say you're at peace and you're truly at peace with something that someone did to you to hurt, betray, abuse you, if you can truly say that you're at peace with it, then guess what? You've already forgiven them. And that's okay. Because what I want to make sure, and when they were making those comments, one of the things that struck me was that maybe they don't fully understand what forgiveness is. And so when we talk about forgiving, we're simply talking about letting go of the pain and emotions that are attached to whatever hurt, betrayal, abuse, a process that happened or experience that happened to you. Never ever is the suggestion of forgiving someone, does that include letting somebody back in your life? That's a separate issue for you to decide once you forgive them. And so it's very important that you understand the difference between forgiving and letting somebody back in your life. Forgiving someone does not mean you have to let them back in your life, and sometimes it's not even safe to let that, or appropriate to let that person back in your life. You're simply, when you decide to forgive and you go through the process of forgiving, you're simply letting go of the pain of the individual that hurt you. I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I first started in the field of counseling, I had a man that came in, African American man that came in, and he was having heart trouble. His hair was falling out. He was stressed out all the time, blood pressure up, just having a myriad of um, physical health consequences because he was so angry and so hurt because because of the gross amount of racism that he had experienced on his job. And through that process of working with him and getting past the anger, we got to the point of him forgiving those individuals. And he really struggled and he resisted me on the ideal of forgiving someone. And so once I explained to him and worked with him and explained to him what I just explained to you, that what they did does not mean you have to let those people back in your life. It does not justify their actions. It does not excuse their actions. It does not excuse or make better anything that they've done to you. We're not saying that it was okay. None of that. If someone betrayed you or hurt you, and especially if it was intentional, that's never okay. But the point in this is it's not about you, it's not about them, it's about you. And so once he finally understood that forgiving those people that had committed gross acts of racism against him was not about saying that it was okay that they had did that, and that it was not about excusing the behavior, and that he didn't have to let those people into his life, he began the process of forgiving. And guess what? In months, he came out of his blood pressure medication. He let the anger go. He let the resentment go. He let the pain go. His blood pressure returned to normal. His hair started growing back. And he started living a better quality of life because he was able to move past all of the anger and pain from that. So again, when we talk about forgiving, it is a process. It's not an overnight fix. And it's forgiving is an action word. It's not a noun. It's an action word, meaning you have to be intentional when you say you're going to forgive somebody. So being intentional means first making the decision that you are going to forgive. Make a list of those individuals that you need to forgive, and then as you start to work through that process of each person that you need to forgive, what was the act that they committed against you? Act or acts that they committed against you. Um, is it possible to look at it from their perspective? And what I mean by that, I'm not excusing anybody. If for a child that has been molested or abused, never ever would I say that that's okay. But an example would be I worked with a client whose mother was very abusive, and from our guesstimation was that her mother had a mental health illness. The client wasn't sure, but from what she described, and I am not diagnosing her mother because I've never seen her, but from what the client described, the mother had a mental health illness that had never been diagnosed and never treated. And so as a result, those behaviors manifested, and the client was abused most of her childhood. So again, I'm not saying that it's okay or that the mother's behavior should be an excuse. But once the client understood that her mother may have been suffering from a mental health illness and understood what that illness is and what how those behaviors manifested, she was able to have a little more compassion for her mother and understand where that abuse came from, and not that necessarily her mother didn't love her, but because of the mental health illness that was present, it wasn't being treated, it produced some different behaviors. And then the client was able to move forward and have compassion for herself. She was able to forgive herself for some things that she felt like she should have, would have, could have done, and learning to love herself because she felt like her mother didn't love her. And so as she moved from having compassion for the person to compassion for herself, she was then able to move into a space where she could truly start to heal from the pain of it all. So those are examples of what I mean when I say maybe. And again, there may be times that there is no explanation for why an individual hurt you, abused you, betrayed you, misused you. Sometimes it was just pure evil. So again, as I've said before, there's no prescription for one individual. One size doesn't fit all. And so for everybody and even if you've had different people betray you over your lifetime, you would have to look at each situation different. As always, you'll always hear me say and even in going through this process, you may have to reach out and seek services and have someone help you work through this process. And how do you know when you need to reach out? When talking about it with friends and families isn't enough. When you've prayed about it and you get no relief, sometimes maybe God is prompting you to go get services. When it just keeps continuing to haunt you and you just can't seem to let go, then maybe you need to seek services. So in all of this, I will say again, forgiving is not for the individual. Forgiving is for you. And so let's start considering those things that will help you to forgive. So in order to help you move on, to let go of the pains of the past and start living a more peaceful, productive, fulfilling life. As always, this is Dr. Hubbard, and I will be coming back to you all again with a continued conversation regarding mental health. Have a great day.